All right, everybody, welcome back into another edition of the Auburn Live Show. It is Friday morning. As you watch this, another college football weekend on the horizon. Appreciate everybody joining us. I am Justin Hokanson from AuburnLive.com, part of the On3 Sports Network. So make sure you're a subscriber of AuburnLive.com. If you're not, $10 a month right now, which is just crazy. So make sure you're a part of that. As always on Fridays, we'd like to welcome in our good buddy Barrett Sallee from CBS Sports. Barrett, what's up, man? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Just getting ready for the Major League Baseball playoffs, and gonna have to orchestrate and organize my baseball attendance schedule around college football, which is never easy to do.
Man, hey, how about my Cardinals making a run out of
Oh,
nowhere?
how crazy was that? Like, I know you're a Cardinals fan, but I mean, not in anybody's wildest dreams did I think they'd be able to rip off 17 straight.
It's unbelievable. But we'll see. The Cardinals, man, they're one of those franchises the last 20 years that you just never know. I mean, they're always
Yeah.
pretty solid, pretty consistent.
Yep.
All right, let's jump into this, man. College football weekend. Let's talk about Auburn. Let's lead things off with Auburn, and then we'll talk a little bit national on the back end. Nothing really going on in Auburn. Pretty quiet as always. So as Auburn gets into conference play, no, man, what a weekend. Georgia State, they squeak it out. I have no idea what happened in the first half of that football game. Um, and then, of course, Sunday happens, and we actually broke the news of Cornelius Williams firing, which was shocking. Um, and now Auburn gets ready for LSU, potentially starting TJ Finley, who came to Auburn from LSU. So an eventful few days. I guess just let's go back real quick. What were your thoughts on the weekend, the close game against Georgia State, and then the Cornelius Williams firing? What were just some of your takes on those two events on Saturday and Sunday for Auburn?
I mean, it just seems like Auburn's defensive front is just kind of okay at best, it's been a while since we said something like that. So that stuck out to me. And then obviously it was time for a change with Bo. TJ came in, he did a great job. Being put in that situation in a big game is one thing, but in a game that you're even as a backup quarterback supposed to win and win handily, to dig yourself out of a ditch like that is pretty darn solid. So, I think that it was time. It was clear that Bo Nix, the course has been run, right? Like, we know what we're going to get with him, especially on the road. And so TJ Finley's unknown. And okay, yeah, I mean, you don't know what he can do as a member of the Auburn Tigers on the road. We did see what he could do as a member of the LSU Tigers on the road last year. But would you take the unknown over what Bo Nix provides on the road? I would, just because he's the hot hand.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting scenario. I think there's a lot of complications. So my thought on this is um, Auburn should go with TJ Finley
Yes.
against LSU. I think that he earned that opportunity. He came in, he made plays, which is what you asked him to do. He did that. You kind of know what you got with Bo Nix. He just hasn't, and it's not all his fault. It's I mean there's a lot of issues, but they needed a spark. Finley gave it to you. Period. Um, and I also think you got to gauge the team. Brian Harson's the only one that can do that. I think you got to look at the team and figure out, hey, if I go start Nix,
Mhm.
if Nix were the guy, if Finley were somebody else and he kind of came in and made a play, whatever, but Nix was the guy, like Nix had won him a division in the last couple of years or something like that, I could get going back to Nix. But I think the team respects Finley. I think they respect Nix. But I think you run the risk of, if you start Bo Nix, having your teammates go, huh, like that dude, TJ came in and did what you told him to do, won the game. Why didn't he started? I mean, not a knock on Nix. I don't think they don't like Nix. I just think you run the risk of opening up a can of worms there that you don't need to open. I think that the one I guess unknown in this is it's LSU at LSU
Mhm.
with TJ Finley. That's the one thing where you're throwing that, it's a wrench thrown into the situation where you're like, okay, Finley should probably be the starter, but then you got to go, but man, what kind of emotions and nerves is he going to have to deal with starting for the first time at Auburn with that pressure? And it's at LSU, the place you just left. It just adds it adds a whole nother level that you're just not normally going to have to deal with. But I think you just got to roll with it. I mean, I don't think that's a big enough factor to go, ooh, I don't want to throw him out there, and there's too much going on, and maybe we should let him come off the bench. I think if he's earned the right, he's earned the right, and you just figure the rest out.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do too. I just devil's advocate. You know what you're going to get from TJ Finley off the bench. Like we saw that already. We don't know how Bo Nix is going to handle being a backup. Like if they start Finley and it doesn't work out and they have to go to Bo, what kind of backup is he? We know what TJ Finley is as a backup. So, look, there's no right answer or wrong answer because everybody weighs different factors. But to me, like you said, you have to roll with the hot hand. You have to go with the guy who, pulled you out of a hole last week that the players trust and played hard for. So, I think either way, Brian Harson's going to have questions to answer if it doesn't work out. And honestly, he's just got to roll the dice at this point. He's going to have to trust himself and his instinct. And my gut is that it's going to be TJ Finley.
Yeah. Well, and look, he did it during the game. I mean, you're losing at home in your fourth game as Auburn head coach to Georgia State, and you've got the guts to pull Bo Nix, a legacy and a 3-year starter, and put TJ Finley in that ball game. No, and I don't know. TJ Finley's not played at Auburn. Yeah. I mean, so that was a gutsy decision. I mean, some people might have thought it was an easy decision. I don't think it was that easy. I think there's a lot of things going on there. The easy thing is maybe just stick with Bo and and just say, well, we had a lot of problems. It wasn't just the quarterback. And so putting Finley in there, I think is I think it was a pretty bold move. I will say I really like. I don't know why exactly it didn't work with TJ Finley and LSU last year. I mean, that whole team had issues. TJ didn't. He had some good. I guess a good game. Right. South Carolina, I played okay. Auburn. It's weird for Auburn though because if you're Auburn, you destroyed LSU and TJ Finley last year. So it's a little odd because you're sitting here thinking, okay, Finley would have been probably their third string quarterback for LSU. Like best case scenario, he's second. But it's weird because you're like Auburn. You're thinking we smoked this guy last year. Like who is TJ Finley this year? I mean, I don't know. All I know is from listening to him at Auburn. He's a really mature sounding kid, and from what I saw in that Georgia State game, seems to have his head on his shoulders, made some really calm, poised plays. So I'm curious to see what he looks like in that environment. I can't imagine a more nerve-wracking environment for him to start his first game at Auburn in Baton Rouge and LSU, the place he just left. Like if he can look somewhat calm, let's say he starts. If he looks calm in the first quarter of that game, I'd be really impressed. I'm just curious to see what version of TJ Finley we get if he's the starter. Like, what's he look like?
Well, yeah, I am too. And here's the thing too. If you're LSU, right? If you're Durante Jones, you're looking at Auburn thinking, okay, they're going to roll with Bo Nix or TJ Finley. So that means you're going to get a hefty dose of Tank Bigsby, right? Like it's a fair assumption if you're a defensive coordinator to assume no matter who starts that it's going to be all Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter right out of the gate. Well, if you're Mike Bobo, don't you know that Durante Jones is thinking that? Wouldn't part of the game plan or at least a thought process be, all right, like if TJ Finley, let's go air it out. Like let's just sling it around early and see what happens. Like that realistically could be something that happens.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Auburn's got and the other thing is LSU's they come after the quarterback so well. Now I say that. And people have made a lot about LSU at leading the nation in sacks. They only had one against Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State, I mean, maybe it's their style. They can air raid it a little bit. So maybe sometimes they get rid of the ball. They ran the ball pretty well on LSU too. So curious to see if that LSU defensive front, if they're exactly how those numbers play out. But I think you make a good point. I mean, could Auburn come out? TJ Finley's got a great arm. He can make all the throws. I don't know that he's any more accurate than Bo Nix right now. And he missed on some throws too. TJ did. But yeah, I'd be curious to see if they come out and try to throw the ball a little bit more, get the ball out of his hands. Because Georgia State loaded the box. And when Tank Bigsby was in the game, they completely keyed on Tank Bigsby. And when Jarquez was in the game, they did it a little bit less, which is why Hunter had a more normal game in terms of yards per carry. It's kind of more to his norm. When Bigsby was in there, it was like, we're focusing on Bigsby, and then if he doesn't get the ball, all right, we'll deal with it. So Auburn's gonna have to figure out teams that want to stack the box. How do you
react to it?
What do you do about that? Yeah. But that receiver position, let's talk about the receiver position, because obviously the Cornelius Williams news is shocking and goes with that. What did you make of that? And the only thing I could think of was Tony Franklin. That's pretty much what everybody thought of. It's just a midseason, just firing of an assistant is just in 4 games in. It's not even midseason. What was your immediate reaction when you heard that news?
Well, when you texted me, I thought it was a fake account. I thought you had created a burner account or something and just making stuff up. So yeah, it's odd, right? Like it felt like there was some, I wouldn't say pent up frustration, but you kind of go back and think about the summer, and there was a lot of, criticism from Brian Harsin about the wide receivers and how critical it was and that they're not performing and things like that. So, I mean, it almost was like it was immediate, which was strange to me that, through 15 practices after spring or, 25 or whatever it was in mid-August, that you're already making snap judgments on where a developmental unit is. And I didn't think the wide receivers were that bad. I mean, they weren't great really for Auburn so far. I'd say maybe they lost the Penn State game. I don't know. I mean, like they had a couple key drops and maybe things go differently, but it wasn't really the wide receiver. So I was surprised, and definitely thought of Tony Franklin. And I think pretty much everybody associated with Auburn did too. But very strange. But I guess like having somebody who he's familiar with on staff is maybe what, if you're going to make that decision and you've already got somebody serving in that role, at least as a sounding board, I guess it makes it easier to transition.
Yeah. And that's where by the way, Tony Franklin apparently was also thinking about Tony Franklin. Because I mean, like, where did that come from? The guy's got a podcast. I mean,
I had no idea he had a podcast. No, it was like, wait a minute, I'm going to start listening to this.
Out of nowhere, he's got some strong opinions, but Franklin coached Cornelius at Troy. I mean, of course, he's going to take his back. Very odd deal. Look, I like Harsin's approach overall. I can't find a lot of fault in many things Brian Harsin's done so far.
Right.
There's a certain amount we don't know, and we'll have to wait and see. But like the way he's approached, the way he talks about building a program and building a culture and setting expectations for his players and getting out there and being in the middle of it, I can't fault any of that. I mean, I think he's done everything right in terms of gaining trust and what it's going to take to build a program.
Yep.
This move was shocking, and it's hard to not, some fans on our board have thought maybe there's a little bit more skepticism the last few, because of that decision, or, did fans turn on Harsin a little bit like, wait, what? I think he brought that on himself. When you fire a coach 4 games in, I think it's very natural for everybody to go, hold on, wait, what? Like, what's going on? That's not normal. It's not usual. And either he wasn't completely on board with Cornelius Williams, and so he never had a good feeling about him. I think the big factor was, like you mentioned, Eric Keesaw being there, having an experience with Harsin as a receivers coach, being an OC with Harsin. There was such a trust there. Honestly, I don't even know why Keesaw wasn't the receivers coach.
Right.
I mean, it seems like, I mean, looking at that, it's like, why was he brought to be an analyst? Now, from what I understand, I think he was brought to eventually be on the staff, but it's like, why didn't you just make him the receivers coach right out of the gate? I don't know. I mean, did they just not want a bunch of boys? They not want it to look like it was a Boise invasion. It's just an odd thing.
Well, here's the thing too. We talked about it when Harsin got hired, that it drastically, shifted the power structure of Auburn and kind of shrunk the circle of influence. I mean, to me, I don't know. Maybe it suggests that Cornelius was not necessarily a Harsin hire, that they needed Southern people. They needed people with recruiting ties, specifically to the state of Alabama. So, here's Cornelius, who fits, checks all those boxes. to me, this might just be Harsin continuing to take control and ownership of the program and continue to, shrink that circle of influence, which is, I mean, honestly, if you're Auburn, it's odd. You don't necessarily know if this is going to work out, but the fact that he's, taking ownership and making it, a personal, mission to not only win, but win the exact way he wants to win. That's not necessarily how Auburn has worked ever. And he's trying to change that. And Alan Green tried to change it when he hired Brian Harsin.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and it's not to say that the decision wasn't justified. I'm not in the room. You're not in the room. The receivers had issues both in dropping passes and alignment things.
Yeah.
I mean, when Harsin's talking about that stuff, he's not making it up. He clearly is seeing some spacing issues. And then, you go back and look. I saw it when it happened during the game, but then it went on Twitter a little bit. But the last drive of the game for Auburn against Georgia State, on one of the plays, they're short one man. They're short a receiver. And you see Kalen Newton run on the field. So you got to think that stuff like that, Harsin's, you're like, I mean, come on.
That's basic stuff. That's first few days of spring practice stuff.
So I think there was things Cornelius wasn't doing well. But 4 games in makes me think that Cornelius was in a tough spot, clearly, from the beginning. Because you had Keesaw in there kind of looking over his shoulder a little bit probably. And I'm kind of with you. I think Cornelius Williams was not the first choice. I think he was hired because he's in state. He went to high school in Birmingham. He had those recruiting ties, and he's a good recruiter. He's a good coach. He was thought pretty well of. I just think, hey, all right, let's bring him in. Let's see if he can learn it. Let's see if he can fit. And if not, Keesaw, I'm going to bring Keesaw in. He can help. He can help Cornelius grow and develop. And 4 games in, it just wasn't happening. And Harsin it doesn't have, just kind of an unusual move, but he decided I'm not cutting the cord, pull the Band-Aid off and let's go. So just a weird thing, but I think it's fair to try to question it and figure out the logic because it's an unusual move. I think it's perfectly fair to go, wait, what,
what's the
what
goal
exactly,
here?
What's going on? And I don't think it'll be the last. Look, Brian Harsin's going to go through some coaches in these first 2 years. I'm just telling you. Yeah, he's trying to build his culture, and I think his first staff at Auburn, he's trying to figure things out and bring guys in maybe with Auburn experience or SEC experience, or you're not going to get it right off the bat. And they're going to be, after this season, there will be more assistants that let go. There might be more coordinators that leave, and so that's going to, I think fans just get used to it. First couple of years, I bet you there's going to be a decent amount of turnover, maybe even more personnel that transfer until he gets that culture right. All right, let's talk about this LSU game. They're going to Baton Rouge, slight underdog. LSU passing game looked pretty good against Mississippi State, but LSU's got their issues as well. I think it's going to be a close game. What do you think are the factors in this game for Auburn to win, for LSU to win? Like, what are the 1 or 2 things you think it'll come down to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of like a pillow fight on the line of scrimmage. LSU can't run the football. Their offensive line's been a disappointment. And Auburn just kind of goes in these lulls where just like nothing happens on the defensive front. It just like it's just kind of, they go through the motions. So, I think that's the biggest one. I think the other big issue obviously is at quarterback for Auburn, but, for LSU, who's Max Johnson going to be? What's Max Johnson going to be? If Auburn finds a way to continue to, slow down that running game, can Max go out there and find Keyshawn Boutte, 10 times or whatever? Auburn's secondary is experienced and smart enough to know, kind of what LSU is expecting. They know these guys' strengths. They know these guys' weaknesses. So I think it's probably those 3 things. Quarterback for Auburn being obviously the most important, but I do think that when LSU's got the ball, the battle in the trenches is going to be really interesting to follow. And honestly, I have no idea who would actually win that battle on a more consistent basis because, both have struggled.
Yeah, I'm surprised that LSU's struggled running the ball a little bit. I mean, that's unusual for them. They're only at 80 yards per game rushing, but they're a good passing team. I like Max Johnson. I think he's got a bunch of ability. They hit a lot of big plays in the passing game. And so, I mean, that's been a huge weakness for Auburn.
Yeah.
And then you look at the other strength for LSU has been rushing the passer. and that's kind of also been an issue with Auburn is giving up some pressure. And so I think that
Well, and that's another reason to start TJ Finley, because
yeah,
we know what Bo Nix is under pressure, right? Like we've
yeah,
seen that before.
not good.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, TJ, the limited time that we've seen TJ at Auburn, specifically on the fourth down play, did all right.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we talked to Auburn players this week, and they said, especially Nick Brahms. We talked to and Brodarius Ham. Sorry, not we talked to Brodarius Ham. He said it's on them. It's on the offensive line. I mean, they're
Yeah,
going to have to play their best game, protect the quarterback, run the football. They're going to have to really be hitting all cylinders. I'm really curious to see what Derek Mason does. This is kind of his
yeah,
second chance now. Okay, here's chance number two.
hmm
Let's see what you do on defense. Are you going to play a similar style like you did against Penn State and just say, well, we just need to execute it better?
yeah,
Or do you think it's a legit scheming issue that hey, I just messed up. I didn't approach that correctly. We're gonna approach this a little bit differently. Max Johnson, when he's pressured, is not nearly as good. So
yeah,
I'm really curious to see, because if Mason doesn't change, if it looks similar, then there's a problem, because now we're talking about a philosophical deal where Mason's like, no, that's what we're doing. You just got to
yeah.
do it better. Versus, okay, wait a minute, this is the SEC. I need to be a little more aggressive. So I'm really curious to see what he does there, because to me, you've got Roger McCreary and Nehemiah Pritchett. You got two corners that are going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
And McCreary might be a first rounder, late first or early second rounder. And I think they're taken out of the game somewhat when they're playing so much zone. I mean, McCreary is like second or third on the team in tackles. That
hmm
shouldn't be happening.
Yeah,
That
that
doesn't
should
make a lot
never
of
happen.
sense. So those guys need to be a little bit more involved maybe in the game. To me, Max Johnson, Butte, they're gonna pick you apart if
hmm
you play that zone nonsense again. So I'm really curious to see, what does Mason do? Does he learn? Does he really make some adjustments there, and be more aggressive? Because Auburn's got speed, I think, to rush the quarterback if they use it properly. Derek Hall,
Yeah.
Romello Height, TD Moultrie, Owen Pappo, those guys can get after the quarterback if they're used properly. Of course, if I'm LSU, I don't know how many tight ends they have, but I would be throwing to them all. I'd be like, well, let's see if they figured this out yet.
Yeah, well, pop one tape on, and that should be abundantly clear. But no, I mean you're right. But the thing is, like Derek's been around for so long, I have to think that he just screwed up against Penn State, and that he recognizes that, because he's never really struck me as the stubborn type. Energetic, yeah, but to me, I think it was just a misdiagnosis of what really, that Penn State offense was capable of. And I'd be surprised if he got stubborn and tried to impose a philosophy that wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. How big a game is this for Auburn, man? I mean, it's people asked me on the board. They said, I think before the season, 8-4 was like, people seem to be fine 8-4. That was possible. That was doable, and they would be fine with 8-4.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at it going, okay, you got a loss. Arkansas and Ole Miss are now better than you thought. 8-4 to me now looks like a great season. If
Yeah.
you go, what are they sitting at, 3-1? So you talk 5-3. If they go 5-3 in the SEC with what they've got coming up, and they got 4 straight ranked games after LSU coming up, man, 8-4 looks way better. 8-4 now looks like 9-3 did
Yeah.
before the season. Are you there? Could they be 6-6? I mean, how huge is this LSU game if they lose?
It's big, but I still don't buy Arkansas all that much. I think Texas A&M's Texas A&M. You kind of know what they are at this point. And I mean, honestly, Ole Miss. I love Ole Miss, but it just depends on what Ole Miss you run into that day. I mean, they could be awesome or they could be bad, and they're probably not going to be anything in between. And right now, we've seen a lot of really good. So. Yeah, I mean, 7-5 is. I think I had them 7-5 to begin the season anyway, including a loss to Penn State, and that's still kind of where I am. I just think that that they're good enough to win a couple of toss-up games, and if you can win a couple of toss-up games, then 8-4 is certainly possible, and 7-5 is tolerable. 6-6 shouldn't be, not with the talent they have.
Yeah, I'm with you on 7-5. I think 7-5. If you put a gun to my head right now, I would go 7-5.
Yeah,
Yeah, that puts them 4 more losses, and you've got like I said, pretty tough. You got to think Georgia and Alabama. You got to think those are losses, and so then you're talking about two more out of Arkansas, Ole Miss, LSU, South Carolina, and A&M. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, let's see more of the season if Ole Miss and Arkansas. Let's see if they cool down at all. The thing about Auburn now, though, it's literally week to week. I mean, Penn State, you're going, hey, people think Penn State is the sixth best team in the country right now. So
Auburn
if you look back
can
and
hang.
go, Auburn can hang. And then a week later, that happens with Auburn. So Auburn's got so many things to figure out. You know, what do they look like if Finley's like a halfway decent quarterback?
I mean, you mean
what
to say
do
things are unstable at Auburn? Never.
What do they look like if they stop busting assignments? Like Auburn's a couple of tweaks away from going. I mean, why can't they beat Arkansas or Ole Miss or A&M? I mean, if they can figure out a couple of things, but then there are also a couple of things from like outside of South Carolina, losing them all. Losing to Georgia State. So it's just man, I don't know. I think Carson. It'll be interesting to see his approach throughout this year if they lose to LSU. He's such a process guy. Does he ever? I'm just curious
change up
to see
his process. Yeah,
and he's not used to losing. He's not used to losing. If they start a losing streak, what is that going to do to him?
Yeah, he could get desperate. But I mean, honestly, he's already made some pretty smart decisions with a ton of pressure in his face. So I mean, it, like you said earlier, it takes a pretty big swallowing your pride a little bit and a lot of guts to do what he did, putting Finley in. And like, he even joked after the game. I don't know if I assume you were on the Zoom call where he said, look, we changed the offensive line. We changed a little bit with the running backs. We changed a little bit with the wide receivers. There was nothing left for me to do. I mean, that's good that he figured out that that's the way to operate. So yeah, I mean, he hasn't been in situations like this before, and it'll be interesting to see how he reacts. But I mean, 7-5, 8-4, perfectly fine. You've already, I think, kind of got a glimpse of what Brian Harsin's all about as a coach, and it's mostly good. So in year one, that's pretty much all you can ask for.
Yeah, that was a funny comment, by the way. He's like, well, I changed this. So there wasn't anything left to do.
Yeah.
And Finley, by the way, repeated that, which I thought was funny. Basically, it's almost like he read the post game and then he repeated that answer on ESPN Baton Rouge, which was a really good interview. I don't know if you listened to that.
Yeah, I did.
Really impressive. I mean, TJ Finley. I mean, he's talking about, hey, whether it's my opportunity or not, that's not what it's about. I'm going to stay ready. I'm going to stay prepared. And I came away, and I listened to Bo Nix earlier in the week as well in Birmingham. And again, I came away thinking, look, I don't know who's going to start for Auburn. I don't know who's going to start at quarterback or who's going to be the guy. But I do think you got two pretty mature guys that are about leading the team. So I guess I'm not worried right now about there being an issue internally. I think you got two guys that want to win, that respect each other, two decent human beings. So at least that's a good thing. You don't have, it'd be weird if Finley came in and was really cocky and was like, I don't care about Bo Nix. That could be an issue. Or if Bo thought, I'm an Auburn legacy, like, who are you? But I don't think you have that. So, I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, they seem to support each other. And, that's, again, Bo Nix even said it. He goes, I think it was on the thing in Birmingham. He's like, no, it sucks. I mean, I'm a competitor. I don't want to get benched. But he said basically he deserved it and understood and, cheered Finley on and supported him. And, if both of them can act that way, then I think it certainly would, that kind of attitude trickles through a locker room. And ultimately that is a big part of why teams are successful. That might be a little bit of a different bar this year for Auburn just because of all the changes. And, but that certainly it changes the way players in a program approach the program. And that's a good thing. And from a quarterback position, if you can have two guys acting like that, it doesn't just help this year, but a lot of those players that are younger see that and will bring that same attitude to next year than the year after.
So what's your final word on this game? I'll tell you what I think. And again, I lean cynical, like against Penn State. I never thought they were going to beat Penn State. I just didn't like the scenario. I kind of went pretty much like I thought. I don't know where this is coming from, but there's a sneaky optimism in me about Auburn going into this game and playing well. I could be, look, Finley could go there
in Baton Rouge.
They could throw Nix. I really do. I think they're going to go play well, and it's going to be up for grabs in the fourth quarter. And it's just a weird enough scenario in this series. It's a weird enough scenario
Everything in this series is weird.
for Auburn to break the streak. For Auburn to break the streak 20 plus years with an LSU quarterback just makes too much sense to me.
It does make sense. It does. It's very on brand. It's very on brand. No, I think LSU is going to win. I think it's going to be Finley. I think there's going to be a chance in the fourth quarter. Auburn will have its shots. I just kind of feel like LSU is going to score more points than maybe a lot of folks expect. I think their offense is pretty dynamic, and even if it is one-dimensional, they're still going to have success through the air, especially considering Auburn hasn't really been able to generate pressure. So I think LSU wins, but I'm not like just chalking it up as a loss just because it's Baton Rouge. I think Auburn certainly will have a chance.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good game. And the other thing TJ Finley said that I'm curious to know is he thinks he has the advantage over LSU because he knows them better. He's like he kind of thinks they don't quite know. Hey, I've changed a lot. I've grown. I've matured. I think I'm a different quarterback, and so he's kind of thinking they might know me, but they might not know me.
They don't know this
now.
Yeah,
in this offense, and he's like, well, I know you guys, and so that's an interesting thing to watch too. Is that something that gives TJ Finley a little bit of comfort?
He practiced against these guys. Like he knows their weaknesses.
And he's been in the stadium. He's never been on the visiting side, but he's played in that stadium plenty. So it's not like he's walking in going, whoa. He's been to whiteout, and now he's played in that stadium. So the moment's not going to be anything special for him. I don't think.
And it's like we talked about before the Penn State game too. Some of these LSU guys actually spent a lot of these LSU players because they were so young last year haven't been in that stadium in that atmosphere either. They just, because of limited attendance last year. So it's a different wrinkle for sure.
And of course, Auburn's going to get coming off COVID where nobody's been in a full stadium. They're like, all right, Auburn, in your first 5 games, you get to go to Penn State and LSU where those people are so pent up and so ready to be in a sold out environment, 2 of the largest stadiums in the country, and Auburn gets to go try their hand. That's, of course,
well, here's the thing, though. Here's what I was thinking, like 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Could that be too long for them to pregame? Is there like a level, like when you're playing golf, right? Like you had the level where there's 2 or 3 beers where your mechanics are still fine. You can still, play pretty effectively. And then like that one drop of beer number 4 and your mechanics just completely fall apart. Maybe that's the case with LSU fans this week.
They might peak a little early.
Yeah, yes, exactly. By the time they get to the second half, like, dang, my head hurts.
It dies down a little bit. Yeah, that's funny. That's a good point. That's, by the way, ridiculous. Why are we starting games at 8 p.m. Central in Louisiana?
We're very old people complaining about that, but I agree.
It's just insane. All right, college football weekend, 2 massive games in the SEC: Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia, Arkansas. I think you're going to agree with me on this. I think Georgia wins by like 17, maybe more.
I think more.
I think Arkansas has shown really good defense, can run the ball tough. They seem to be doing everything right. But this is going to be a wake up call, right?
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas fans like to say, "Oh, well, they haven't played a top 80 offense, so that defense isn't that good." I'm like, have you watched Georgia? Like, I don't care who they're playing. That defense is insane. And KJ Jefferson ain't beating them. I like KJ Jefferson was good last week. Good for him for coming out, especially injured. Awesome, dude. Good job. But this is a little different. So, and then, I mean, I know Georgia had its struggles against Clemson offensively, but I kind of think that they just recognized that was kind of the pace of the game, and they didn't try to do anything. And JT was hurt. So, whatever, just put it in neutral and be done with it. They're a lot more dynamic now than I think a lot of folks expected. And that's going to not work well for Arkansas, a defense that doesn't necessarily have that kind of team speed.
Yeah, interesting. So Sam Pittman goes back to Georgia, and Lane Kiffin playing, his former protege a little bit, and Nick Saban in Ole Miss and Alabama. I think that's the game everybody's keyed on. Can Ole Miss, are they for real? I think we all think the offense is for real. It is for real. It is for real. It's a talented offense.
The defense.
And a great play caller. Alabama's been great. Not, offensively,
They can't run the ball.
Not exactly what they've been the last couple of years. I think I even saw a stat on tempo. Not that they're Alabama some super high tempo, but their ability to play fast is there, but they're way down in that. They're not moving at some fast pace at all, and Ole Miss will. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting game. I don't see why this isn't a ball game entering the fourth quarter.
100% agree. And look, I think Ole Miss's defense is significantly better than last year, which, I mean, just average nationally is significantly better than last year. But like, here's the thing: are they good enough to get a few stops on Alabama, right? And with the way Alabama's running game has been, the answer is yeah. I mean, they are. They're not necessarily going to do it every time, but they are. And so does Alabama cash in on those red zone opportunities with 6 instead of 3? Theoretically, yeah, and generally they do, but it's that defense I think is good enough to get a couple of stops and force Alabama into situations where it has to slow down that offense. And what do we know about Saban defenses, right? Like, tempo drives them crazy. And I think it was last game for Ole Miss. I think it was the last game because they were off last weekend, that the average play when they were running tempo got snapped within 8 seconds of the play clock starting. And that does not work against Nick Saban. Does not like that. He is anti-tempo. So, you throw in the talent that they've got and, the play calling of Lane and Jeff Lovie, then yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I think it'll be in the fourth quarter, Alabama or Ole Miss will have the ball with a chance. There's no doubt.
Do you think this looks like last year? Because this is the game last year that produced like the most ridiculous stat of all time. Like, Ole Miss only stopped about 40 possible yards against Alabama. Alabama gained every yard they possibly could, with the exception of about 40 yards in that football game. It's incredible. It's like 700 yards of offense, and Ole Miss was still in it. And so, is that what we're looking at again? I mean, is this going to be 45 to 40?
Yeah, probably even more than that. The over-under is 79.5. Like, that's just think about, like, if you were, say, in 2011, there's going to be a game that Nick Saban coaches in at Alabama where the over-under is almost 80. Called insane.
No way.
Yeah. No, it's going to be like last year. And think about last year too. Like, Ole Miss was in that game. There was I think a fourth down stop, and then Lane punted when he probably shouldn't have, or something like that. But that just drastically changed everything, and Alabama ran away at the end. It's going to be that same thing could happen. It would be on Lane and that coaching staff to make the proper decisions. Which Lane learns his lesson. He's not opposed to learning lessons and trying new things. So I think it's going to be a lot like that. I mean, that's why I can't wait to see it. That's going to be a 5-hour game. This is going to be 5 hours of just nonstop action.
Oh my gosh. That's the 2:30 CBS game?
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, that game's going till I'm in Central.
Till Auburn LSU kicks off.
Yeah, that game's going to end, and we'll have about an hour till Auburn LSU at 8.
Yep.
That game's going to be – so, dude, Ole Miss wins that game. I mean, how do they not make the playoff? I mean, they're in – I guess you got to get – maybe they face Georgia. But, man, they win that game, and we're seriously talking about Ole Miss as one of the 6 teams that's in line to get in the playoff. If they pull that off.
And think about it. They have a 2-game lead in the West because, I mean, everyone sort of expects Alabama to win the West. I mean, if there's a tiebreaker, then whatever. But you have a 2-game lead on Alabama. You have the heads up and the 1-game split. So if they beat Alabama, do you see 2 losses on their schedule? I don't. I mean,
no.
It would have to be a team that can play basketball on grass. And you look at the SEC West. I mean, maybe LSU could do that at some point, but not likely. And then everybody else, little offensively challenged. So I mean, it could be a lot different come Saturday night.
Let's end on this. What other storylines are you watching throughout college football? What else should we be? We're all focused in. Most of the people that listen to this podcast are obviously focused in on Auburn and the SEC. What else is going on SEC wise or nationally that you think is interesting this weekend?
I mean, Cincinnati at Notre Dame. And think about this. That's like the biggest group of 5 regular season game ever, right? Like, in terms of the modern era of college football, can you think of a group of 5 team that's ever been in a bigger game in the regular season? I can't. I mean, this would legitimately put them in the playoff contention, like legit playoff contention, because I know folks like to pile on Notre Dame. I get it. They're polarizing, but they've been to the playoff 2 of the last 3 years. Whether people like them or hate them, it doesn't matter. The committee generally does. And if Cincinnati is able to beat Notre Dame, then, they've got a road win at Indiana, which, I mean, granted, Indiana is not what, we expected them to be, but I mean, man, it could put Cincinnati legitimately into the playoff because, an ACC champ, are they going to have a resume like Cincinnati's? No, they're not.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 champ might not either.
This could be the year. I mean, you're already talking about, the dominant team as being just a tad lower. Clemson already lost. What if Alabama gets upset or doesn't look quite, Alabama, Georgia, what if only one of those gets in?
It's 2007 all over again.
Yeah, Cincinnati.
Mass chaos.
Yeah, they've got a great show. That's at Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
I did see the comment from Desmond Ritter, who said that the crowd was going to be quiet. They'll be quiet pretty quickly.
Just
I was like, why would you?
Like that. Don't say stuff like that. Like you're accomplishing nothing. Like you really that's if I'm Nick Saban, or what is it? Quentin Williams before the Oklahoma semifinal. Kyler Murray. I don't think he's up. You want to finish that? No, I'm good. No, I'm good. Like, don't do that. Don't do that stuff.
Yeah, that was a dumb comment. All right, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. That's gonna be a fun one. That's gonna be a fun one as well. That's gonna be a good game.
I can't wait to see that one. And then, are we buying Michigan yet?
I haven't seen it play.
I mean, they're playing they're playing Wisconsin, and we kind of know what Wisconsin is, right? But I mean, if Michigan goes out there and beats Wisconsin like a drum, are they any different than Penn State and Notre Dame at that point? Probably not, right?
Yeah, no. Who's Penn State got? I think Penn State is going to luck out right now because of where Auburn was ranked and the fact that was a close game and Auburn's a name. Now, how do you not look at Penn State and go, hold on? Like squeak by Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's now got a couple losses. Squeak by Auburn. Auburn, what if Auburn loses this Saturday? Now you're looking at Penn State going, maybe we got a little carried away with ourselves. Maybe they
wouldn't have any top 25 wins then because Wisconsin would be out and Auburn obviously would be out. So I mean, that's the beauty part though. That's why I love this sport. That Auburn Penn State game, when it happened, like the joy of college football. I know Auburn fans didn't like it, but that was an awesome game. Like that was college football at its best. And what if by the end of the season we kind of look at that and say, it didn't really mean anything.
Yeah, we could. And then you got Kentucky, Florida, right?
Yeah, Kentucky, man. I don't know if I buy Will Levis. Do you buy Will Levis? I don't.
I don't. Well, no, he's kind of fallen off a little bit. I'm not sure yet. I mean, look, sold out, right? It's in Kentucky, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be a crazy crowd. They think maybe this is their year to do something, whatever do something means for them, because they're not winning the East. But Florida rolls in there, whatever, ranked really highly. So
I like Florida. I think Florida's done a lot, though. I think they've kind of, figured out their identity a little bit. Like I think Dan kind of figured out, hey, let's swallow the pride a little bit and not try to make Emory Jones something that he's not. And
he's been good, right?
He's been fine. Yeah. If they keep him as a look, I joked about this, but the more I thought about it, it's accurate. Like he needs to be Nick Marshall, right? Run, and then figure out 6 things you do well through the air. That's whatever.
That's scary. That's scary with Dan Mullen. I mean, you're right. If Dan Mullen right now said, I'm doing that, I'm doing 13 Auburn. Like Dan Mullen's a good enough offensive coordinator to figure that out, and they can already run the ball. You're right. That'd be scary. If
the thing about it is, Nick Marshall at Auburn, he was a pretty effective passer, but he was like the zone read game. I don't think he ever got enough credit for how smart he was and how he never made a mistake in that. And Emory made one on that 2-point conversion against Alabama, but that's pretty much it. He can do that and, build off of it. And I think that's kind of what Mullen figured out in that Alabama game. Like, all right, like this guy's not going to be, Cam Newton. He's not going to be, Robert Griffin III and be able to stretch the field consistently. That's just not who he is.
Yeah. Man, that's a scary thought. It's a dadgum good idea for Florida.
I stumble into a few of those every once in a while.
I mean, with the way they can already run the ball. If they went that route, there's no telling what Dan Mullen and that team could be capable of for the rest of the year. Well, we'll see how that shakes out. I'm excited to have kind of our first conference, big games conference schedule into conference play rolling. When Auburn LSU is game number 3 in terms of in the league, that's a good conference slate.
Auburn are you trying to say UConn Vandy is not a huge game?
I
honestly can't wait to watch that. I'm not going to
100 people, 500 people.
Get in price as of Thursday afternoon was $6.
$6.
Look,
I don't
honestly,
you have to pay me.
I know it's on like at the end of Ole Miss Alabama. I'm gonna watch that though, just a little bit, just as a glutton for punishment or a fan of comedy. Like, it seems like it's a good idea.
It's gonna look sort of competitive because there's so
it
bad.
is.
They're gonna be like, hey, it's a competitive game.
It's gonna be a real competitive game.
Terrible. I know, but man, really. I mean, I would guess maybe. Gosh, I mean, I don't. How are there 10,000 people at that game? How are there 8,000 people at that game? There's no way.
I don't know. And when was the last time you saw Vandy laying 14.5 points?
Oh my gosh. I mean, sometimes the stars just align for a game like that. It's just a great matchup, and it all just kind of comes together.
The one we've been waiting for. It's the one we've been waiting for.
Somebody tweeted a couple weeks ago. They're like, I think we've run our course with UConn football. I think we're good. I think we can just kind of usher them off into the sunset. I think we've all got our fill. Like, we're good now. I think we can just do
UConn, the team that played in a BCS bowl 1 week before Auburn played in the national championship game in the same stadium.
Wow, I forgot about that.
UConn, Oklahoma.
Was their running back a good running back that year, right? UConn.
Yeah, who was that?
And I can't remember now, but they had a really, really good Brown, maybe Donald Brown.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah, UConn back in the
day, man.
UConn Vandy. All right, well, we'll see how it goes. Auburn LSU is the one we're watching at auburnlive.com. Auburn hasn't won at LSU since 1999. They haven't won 2 in a row since 99-2000. Of course, they beat LSU last year 48-11, so they've got a chance to do that. And LSU's owned this series. They've won 10 of 14. LSU has.
Yep.
This is why Gus Malzahn ultimately got fired. LSU, he lost a bunch of games. Georgia, he lost. Georgia, it's the same. It's worse than 10 of 14. Yep. It's even worse. So this is Brian Harson's first opportunity. You want to make a move if you're Brian Harsin? Go win in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, go
number 1.
Go ruin that streak and go in that streak and then go from there.
Yes, you go.
Oh, and by the way, Georgia's coming up the next weekend. Good luck with that.
Hey, but yeah, by the way, yeah. So if he loses this, it's literally the 2 games that Gus could never win. LSU, Georgia, and he could start off boom, boom, LL. Not great. But man, if he could end that streak, Auburn fans still that 17 game with Malzahn, they still are like, that still eats at them. And it was just a regular season game. It didn't really make Auburn still won the West that year, but that game still eats at Auburn fans that he blew a 20-point lead.
That was awful. That was awful.
Yeah.
But that's why Gus got fired. You're right. LSU and Georgia.
So we'll see how it goes. We'll see if Auburn can break this streak. They seem confident. Smoke Monday said this week that he thinks this team can break the streak. And I think they're capable of it too. We just got to figure out what kind of Auburn team, and can they figure some things out early on offense that gives Finley a little bit of confidence, and can they do some things good early in the game?
Yep.
All right, Barrett. Appreciate it, man. CBSSports.com. Make sure and check out Barrett Sallee, and then Sirius XM on Sunday mornings, channel 84?
84.
84.
And if you miss it, you get 19 more hours of me because they just replay it over and over again.
Nice. That's what we need. Perfect, dude. Appreciate it, man. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, man.
All right. See ya.